Hey everyone, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Brand Power Analysis. Today I have on
Andrew Petcash.
Andrew Petcash. I didn't want to say your last name. I was afraid I was going to butcher it. I was going to
Just
butcher
Pet
it.
and Cash put together.
so so we had an interesting call last week, just kind of getting to know each other a little bit, and I think that it's a perfect time for us to really just get to know about you. Why don't you dive into your story a little bit? I want to so the listeners can kind of hear like where you came from and your story.
For sure. Yeah. So basically graduated college from Boston University last year where I played basketball. And up until that point, like basketball was basically everything and not much in between besides that in school. So, grew up working through that, the whole athletic, learned the discipline, consistency, all the characteristics that have kind of carried me through now. But during my junior year, we made the NCAA tournament. So we're supposed to be in March Madness, fill out your bracket. You'd see Boston U. I was playing well, team playing well, and the world kind of just shut down. And we actually won our tournament, but didn't get to go to the big dance for the 1 year it got shut down. But anyway, that kind of spurred me into like, okay, what are my passions? Basketball is about to end soon. And it was like, I love business. I love building things, entrepreneurship, finance. And then I also love sports. How can I combine them? So that's when I was kind of like, hey, personal brand is huge. Let me like go and kind of just share my wisdom, and kind of found this niche of business of athletes that until recently I was like the only one doing. Over the last couple of months, I've seen people shoot up, and I'm like, okay, competition, but that also means I'm on to something, which is good. And I had the jump start. So just been kind of building in this like media lane. So through sponsorships and stuff, but then also the long-term goal is to work more, which I have started a little bit, but to work more in line with the actual founders of these sports startups, whether through investment or through like actual, partnership or work, or I guess kind of sort of an agency model. I don't know. I'm still determining all that, but right now it's really just like, it's just me and the brand behind me, which is Profluence.
Profluence, how's that going?
Profluence is going great. I just recently switched to the name. It was just me, like just everything was Andrew Petcash or Petcash. And then just had some legal trouble with something I wrote in the company. So then I was like, okay, that kind of was like, all right, maybe I need a brand just to protect myself. And then just it just makes it easier and more professional, right? When you're not just like Andrew Petcash at gmail.com. You're like Andrew at profluence.com. And then you're like, what's Profluence? And so that's kind of been the switch there. I think it's important for people to have their main brand, but also why not just have something else that's everyone knows it's you. It's just like the legal separation.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because working with plenty of athletes over the years, I've kind of seen this theme, we'll say. I mean, I'll talk to athletes that are retiring, and they'll still be using their college email. And I mean, I get it, because there's this whole spam situation where like they're afraid of fans
Yeah.
finding them and reaching out to them. But I think that we're in an age right now, and of not just one personal brands, but leveraging that personal brand and kind of slowly turning it into a corporate brand. And I think that you coming up with the name and pushing that through. I know you can't talk. You probably don't want to talk a lot about the legal stuff, but why don't you kind of go?
Okay.
Why don't you go into a little bit about like your deciding factor? Like what made you really push towards naming the company Profluence?
Yeah, that was good questions. Well, first, like the legal stuff, it was just a defamation thing. I wrote something about a company I provided facts on a company doing shady stuff, and they did get in trouble, but like they just tried to like basically sue. to say it wasn't true, because I ended like anytime you typed in the name of what they did, like mine was like articles like the top search results. So like I
Defamation.
get it.
Tried to get you as defamation. Yeah.
Defamation, yeah, but it worked out because they were doing stuff wrong, and that's the nice thing about building an audience is I like, put it out there and people helped me out and said, hey, and then I got in touch with the lawyer and just solved it out, and it was nothing too much, but it just kind of opened my eyes to then be like, okay, let's separate church and state here. And then in terms of Profluence, I just love the name because it combines two words, pro, and then influence, but also like the deeper meaning is like the actual definition of the word according to the dictionary, which I had no clue was a real word. I thought I was just combining two things. It means like number one, to like tell a story or a narrative, which is what I'm always attempting to do. And then number two, it means abundance. And it's just kind of like, it's just cool when I see like anytime I see competition or I see something like, all right, abundance, like, hey, what I'm doing is gonna like keep working and I'm gonna keep winning on multiple fronts. So it's as much as like a personal name as it is, external, which I think it still makes a ton of sense for anyone that sees it like, oh, pro, like pro athletes or pro sports. It's like, sure. Yeah.
It's funny with names because we do a lot of naming stuff for prospects when they first come in, our clients. It's part of our discovery process. But yeah, sometimes it's easy, and it's funny because sometimes it's the whole concept of, something just comes to you and you could go through a plethora of discovery just to find out that the original concept that you came up with was the best one. And usually it is, but sometimes you do have to go through that due diligence to know, okay, these other options don't really work for me. And it just builds that confidence on the name. And so, I think a big thing that with what you're doing and the scarcity that a lot of people have with going into and just starting stuff, what made you really like take that leap? Like, what really was it that got you out of that fear? I mean, I think everyone has some sort of fear in some way, form, or another, but what did you use? What kind of things did you do to kind of help you, make it to that next step?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's where most people get caught up, right? Is just like doing it. And like I'm currently in the process of like all this video stuff. And I found myself trying to make it perfect. And and I was like, wait a second here. I'm doing exactly what I tell everyone else not to do. Like just throw it out there and we'll improve and make it happen. Just like launch it. So I'm actually, funny enough, I know this will release later, but when it does, all my video stuff will be out. But like going back to where it started, I was lucky because I did build some brands. Like I built a YouTube channel up once. I built a separate Twitter account that's now just disbanded. But like I knew how to do it. And because like I had that confidence, I was like, okay. And it was staying in sports and business. So everyone that knew me already knew that I was comfortable with that stuff. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like I get somehow like sometimes people get uncomfortable because they might be talking about something that people are like, oh, you like that? Like, why are you creating content? And it's usually like friends and family that hold people back, which is such a shame because the crazy thing is most people have the talent and they have the knowledge, resources, like network, whatever, to be successful. But it's like their own, like supposed to be closest people that kind of hold them back and the fear of that. So it's like, once you get over that, it's just like, it's cruise control. Cause now people come up to you and it's like, you're talking to all these cool people and they like wish they were doing what you're doing. But when you start, it's never that way. So it's like, can you get through that? And I'm always urging people to do that.
Yeah, the beginning phases are, I think, always it really depends. I think it really depends. Like for us, it wasn't really hard to start. It was really I think for us, for us personally, it's more of I'm not going to say patience, but it's more of like, all right, because now for us, we're monetized. And so for us, it's like, okay,
right.
Now we can see the stats. And so like, okay, what do we, now we're at that point where it's not just starting. It's okay. Now we need to improve. Now we need, I mean, you could look back at our original videos and same thing as you said. I mean, our first couple of videos were crap.
Yeah. It's just everyone's. I think also because when you jump in, then you actually start to act. I don't know. There's just something about it. When you start to actually do it, you learn just way faster and better. Because in theory, you could read everything you want or watch everything you want and craft that perfectly. But until you actually start doing it, it's just like the universe or whatever it is, just make sure you put out crappy stuff at first. Cause like even reading some of my first articles or Twitter threads, absolutely terrible. Like I went back the one like a couple weeks ago and I deleted them just because I was like, I don't want anyone going way back. Like if it looks like I started here, like, but really there was like 3 months before of
I
just
thought about that. I thought about going back into, 2, 3 years ago and deleting, because we're a branding agency. And so like part of us, it was a little bit harder because, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Miles Briggs, but no, not the Miles Briggs, what is it called? I don't remember, but it's an intelligence test. I know a lot of teams do it. The culture index. We had I'm at the part of the business where we're all about building culture, bringing in teammates that, do certain things. And I found out that I was a technical expert. So my whole thing with what I do is I'm very big on looking at the numbers, looking at I like the cut. I like the black and white, it's weird because I'm a branding guy, but I see that I'm at the point now where I'm like, I'm holding myself back because I need to let my employees kind of flourish a little bit more and just have more free reign. I don't micromanage by any means. I'm not a micromanager. I have too much other stuff to do, but it's one of those situations where it's like, like I want you to learn this. I want you to grow. Cause you're right. Like I've learned more in the first year of business. I mean, every year that I'm in business, like even this last year, I feel like I've learned, and it's hard because it's more intangible. Like you can't really sit down and say, I've learned this, and this, but you learned so much. I was in the corporate world for, almost 10 years in my 4 years of college, and I learned way more. Even when I worked for the Phoenix Suns, I learned so much because you're right. Because you kind of dive in and you kind of focus on one kind of thing. But when you're a business owner, you kind of that gratification of change. I think that's one thing that I have. And you probably have the same thing is you probably are like, I want to learn something new every day. I want to get better at something. And that's your craving of change that you get.
For sure. And that's where it gets like difficult though, too. Mm-hmm. Because like, there's never an end, right? There's always the next thing, right? Like if I wanted, I could have just kept putting out Twitter threads and writing good newsletters. But then I'm like, man, videos, like now all of a sudden I'm doing videos and now, I have to hire someone for that. And you have to hire, it's just this continual thing. And it's just always stepping up and trying to keep it at that. So it's fun.
It's one thing that one of our clients said this to me a couple of years back, and it's kind of stuck with me. It's kind of stuck with me over the years. Because this is he's not a sports client, but he's one of our local clients. And he, every time I go in and we're helping him grow 30 to 40% every year with the stuff that we do for him. And he's just like, money's relative. You just, eventually you just get to a point you do. Like when I first started and the mindset shift, and you're just starting. So you'll get there eventually, but there's these mindset shifts that I've noticed that go through depending on how much you make. And I'm at the point now where, me and my wife are happy, like we're personally not like going out and like trying to pay that next bill. I'm still smart and frugal because as I think all of the business influencers say out there, like, don't buy stuff. And I don't like things, I let the business is my thing, So, when it comes to what you're looking at with Profluence and where you're at, like what kind of things have you learned? Let's just go with that. Like what kind of things have you learned over the last 6 months or so that you feel you're going to be able to grow on and improve on as you grow?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and it kind of relates right to what you're talking about, you become numb to like payments and you learn it very quickly. Like for me, like, and anyone listening, like I really wanted profluence.com. I mean, I had to drop, nearly 10K for that. Like, and you just drop it because like, that's what you got to do. And you say, this is an investment in myself, and you just become numb to that. But anyone else, you're not just, none of my friends are 24 years old and just dropping that on business stuff. Right. And it's like, you also pay for quality. That's one of the biggest things I've learned is like, yeah, you're going to pay what you pay for is what you get. If you want to go hire you want a website, Like I'm currently going through some website stuff right now. At first, maybe a year ago, I tried to do it and I hired someone and they're, $1,000 for all this stuff. And they're from,
Another
overseas.
country. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not that good. But then I went and now I hired someone good and, they do it better. Now, if I hired you, it'd be even, better probably. Like, it's like you get what you pay for. And so I've just started to realize like, how big do you want to be? If you want to be big, you got to pay for the best. And then that's how you bring in the best sponsors, clients, or whatever your business is, or best customers. It is what you pay for, right? So
It's a weird combination. It's a weird combination. And have you looked at our website recently?
Yeah, I have the last time we talked. So last week.
What do you think? What do you think of it? What do you think of it?
Let me just pull it out real quick, just so I remember being impressed like off first look, because there was something cool and I'm trying to think about what it was. Oh, like the little X's like really stood out to me.
Part of our brand language. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously like something big that you do, and I've seen a lot of people do, is like kind of the underlined text. Like I've seen that a lot more, like kind of.
What really makes me mad? What really makes me mad? And I don't blame anyone for anything, but this has happened to me a couple times. And I had to learn to not get peeved off about it. And I know that the underlining text thing is becoming big in a lot of industries, but if you look at, and they're not really competitors of ours, but they're in the sports industry, like, Athletes First. I'm not going to say his name, but there was a pro athlete that I follow on LinkedIn, who's retired now, and he came up with a brand. I think 2 years back. He's recently pivoted, as most athletes do pretty often when they're growing their business. But his logo was mine, and then it was just flipped, and then they just like took it out. And I'm ranked number 1 on Google for like athlete branding, like I'm a tech guy, like I told you. So I knew that's kind of the stuff that we do. And I'm like, I know that he just hired, like, you back to what you get, what you pay for. I'm like, I know he just hired a designer from one of those sites, and that designer just searched athlete branding and then saw my logo and then just flipped it. And I'm like, I'm not going to go after him for this. I'm like, there was no need for me to, but you get to the point where you're like, all right, you have to look at it more as a gratification when people steal your stuff. I'm not saying I came up with the underlining thing, but I started that. That was part of our brand language. That was probably the first thing that we introduced into our brand language like 3-4 years ago. And now I feel like everyone's doing it. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm gonna have to shift it again. But no, I appreciate that. But you're right. And back to what you were saying, like, I'm very big on experiences. Like, if someone comes to our website, I want them to look at our site and go, the experience and the way it looks and feels in our brand language, like, we do that for a living. So of course my own stuff has to be, so I'm past that point of just starting. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, all right, we need the best of the best to show that we can do the best of the best. But no, I appreciate that. But you're right. I mean, and it always does depend on the clients and all that stuff. And so, not to go off on a rant here, but why don't you, so let's go back to what you were saying. Like, so you've got your website, and I'll let you continue where you were going at with that.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, basically you get what you pay for. So obviously, like, website's just one example for me, but also you have to make sure as you start bringing in people, you have cash flow, right? Because you can quickly go from like for me at my age, like, I was sitting back going, holy cow, like, I'm doing really well. But then, like, all of a sudden, like, now I'm sitting here this month going, wow, I'm doing really crappy, because just all of a sudden, there's 1 month, there's upfront one, domain name, then you have all of a sudden video stuff, and then you have a website, and now you're going, crap, and now I need to balance this out. So it's all just kind of like a balancing act of making sure, like, you're bringing cash flow in, you're figuring out what are like recurring expenses versus what are like one-time things that are going to last a lifetime. Like for me, like a logo, branding, like a name, like those in theory should last a lifetime. So 5,000, 10,000, whatever it's going to cost you, 20, 30. I mean, it can go all over. Those are going to last a lifetime. So in theory, those should be worth a lot of money to you if you have any aspirations to build something big. But But then ultimately it's just like a lot of it's like a people game. I think people, that's something I've learned. Like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, like brands are just people behind them. So that's why I've been big on personal brand, because like then it's always you. But also, we talked about this a little bit last week. If you build something and it seems like strictly you, then people are going to want to work with you. Um, or if they do want to acquire you, you want to sell down the line, et cetera, you kind of need the brand and you need to remove yourself from it. So there's always like that interesting dynamic as well. I've tried to be smart because I'd love to take on, more projects or do stuff for people, but like they're expecting me. So it's like you either got to charge a really high cost for just you,
Mhm.
or you got to like play the game where like, it's kind of other people doing some stuff, but it seems like you know what I'm saying? Like there's always those fine lines of a lot of stuff of like, that's where the business you just learn, man. You just learn so much. And like
You
my
do,
whole
yeah,
thing
and
is like,
you're at that point, and I'm not gonna say it's not a struggle. Like we talked about this last week. You're right, because you were asking me questions about the personal and the corporate side, and I still have some of those myself. Like I have, for instance, right now, we're in, like I told you, we're in a pivoting phase with what we're going to be doing with the courses and building our brand out, and that's me going at it as a personal brand. But we also have I do have a team, and I love my team. And so it's really about taking your team and evolving them around. I mean, if you look at like someone like I mentioned last week, like a Christo or an Alex Hermosi, for instance, you
yeah,
only see him and his wife. He does a good job at him and his wife doing all that stuff, but you also see, that there's people behind that. But
right,
you get to a point where you don't care, if that makes sense. Like you
right.
trust this guy enough that you trust their team. Um, and so you'll get there. It definitely takes a lot of time and growing and stuff like that. And I'm not even saying I'm perfect yet. And that's the one thing I had to learn about business myself is I've continued to grow. Is business is never perfect, man. It's never perfect every day. And I'm a technical guy. So I like we talked about last week, like I find creating SOPs, systems and procedures, if people don't know what that means, we just went through our whole system and redeveloped our whole system. And I'm like, when I'm going through it and I'm like drooling, I'm like, oh, this is sexy, and, but everyone power to them.
Yeah. And it's all what you want to. Like, for example, like a lot of kids my age, like this past weekend, I went to a college football game and one of my buddies coaches. So it was great. I got to see a bunch of old friends. I got on field, I was on the field the entire game, 30,000 people sold out, big time ESPN game. It's awesome. Like, and I have the best experience you could possibly get from that. All you can eat food, drinks, whatever, go out after with players, teams, friends. But then like it got to Sunday night and I was just like, man, like those were 2 days. Like I couldn't like work on what I wanted to work on. And it was just like, I was missing what I'm building. And it's like, that's what people don't understand. Like, if you don't have that mindset, like you're not going to make it that far, in my opinion, just because like it's people might see for me, oh, cool, you have a cool sponsorship in your newsletter. Like, what is it? And you're always like cautious. You don't tell people too much stuff like that's private, whether it's money or whatever. But also it's like, yeah, but you don't know like how much time and effort and grind and relationships and all that went into that. And
Mm-hmm.
so then if people, that's why I laugh at some of these people starting stuff now currently. And I'm like, yeah, it's sexy what you're doing because you see kind of what I'm doing and you're trying to steal it and you think it's a good model. But, are you going to last for a year? Because guess what? Like, I'm going to last for as long as I want to until I either sell or I die.
Yeah.
So, like, if you want to compete with me, cool. But just know, like, you're not going to make money for a year and I'm not going away and I'm the top dog. Like, you have to have that mindset, I think. And that's just how I've taken it. And you learn that through sports and stuff. So,
Well, and
that's
going back to your point, and that's one of the reasons I got in the industry, because I saw a huge mental situation between owning a business and very similar to an athlete. Like when you lose a game or as you're trying to grow as an athlete, you get to a point where you're like, I want to do better. I want to do better. I want to do better. It's always, I want to do better. And you grind it out, you persevere. It's what I say. I'm very big on, you can see back there, the grit
yeah,
book. I read that book and I was like, this is my agency. Like, this is me and my agency 100%. And, you see this hustle culture and you see this whole perspective, and I think hustle culture is just burnout. Like, yes, you have to work really hard, but there's a point when you have to work smart. And like one of our brand values, and I have to tell my designer this all the time, is keep it simple, man. Keep it simple. Like, the more you grow, the more complex certain things get, and you can't really go backwards. And that's why I was like, you have such a beauty like right now, because you can do all these things. You can buy a $10,000 domain, which is actually a pretty good price, by the way. So good job on that. I reached out recently for a domain when we were doing our pivot, and they were like, it wasn't even being used. I'm like, we want 100 grand. I'm like, dude, I'll give you. And I'm one of those hagglers. This, I know this is getting off subject, but I'm one of those hagglers. Like, I get haggling. Like, I enjoy haggling. So, because we have to do sales too. So like, I'm always willing to help people. So there's this whole concept. If I put something up for $60, don't come at me with a $10, a really low ball offer. I'm like, why don't we just cut to the chase and say it's 40? But, a lot of people will come in and just go really high or really low. And then you try to be like, oh, well, how about this price? This is good, even price. And they're like, no. And you're like, but the vice versa. And you're like, well, then screw you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you, but I agree on your work smart and hard too, though. Like for me, like it's a combination. I kind of made it seem a little from that, like I'm just grinding. It's like true, but I've also set up systems. Like that's what's been fun. But I also think too many people focus on like organization or planning, and it's like they feel productive, but it's like, did you really get anything done? Like you just wrote what you want to do. Why don't you just do what you know you're supposed to do? Like for me, like I can write, oh, I want to do all this content. But then sometimes like you need those hours or 2 hours every now and then. And that's what I like to do on the weekend. But then it's like, yeah, but you still have to write that content. So now I'm just starting to be like, I'd rather write the content than think about what I'm going to write or plan, and go do it. And then you create templates and stuff. Now it used to take me 4 hours to write a Twitter thread. Now it takes me like 30 minutes because you like learn, you figure out templates, what works, what doesn't, you save them, and then boom, 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 you crank them out. And then so you're working smarter. And then it becomes like you see, like your team is public. Like everyone on your team is public. Like I have a lot of people behind me, but they're like behind the scenes, like no one knows who they are, and they might do other stuff. And I'm just like, they help me on things, or there's a few people that like, they literally just work for me, but like no one knows. So it's like, I'm trying to like figure out all that balance as well.
I think you'll get over in time. Because I was the same way. A lot of my people were behind the scenes, especially if you're just hiring like a freelancer to do a one-off project or something like that. They're not really part of your team. They're not your operations. You look at a lot of companies, they're not necessarily out there promoting their HR department or, I'm part of this organization called EO. It's a pretty big organization in the country that focuses on, I work with a lot of $3 to $5 million, really in that range, business owners that help businesses that are trying to get to that million spot. And you have to be making over, as you grow, this is just a side note, you'll learn that unlike the corporate world, people don't mind talking about money in business. Like it's one of those things where it's just like, oh, we made 400,000 last year. And so like, for me, that's where we're at. We're at a pivotal point right now where we're in this big gap period of like, oh, well, I either go from a 40% profit margin to a 5% and hire more people, or I stay stagnant, And so, which, they call the valley of death period, but besides the point. But a lot of my employees, I was trying to push them. I've been trying to push them more public, but I've been going back and forth on that, myself, because, I'm also building a personal brand. And
right.
So you'll never know what answer is right. As you said, like you picking your name, you kind of have to, sometimes you have to go with it. And sometimes even when your business grows, you kind of just sometimes have to take a leap of faith. Even if the first 10 times you take a leap of faith, you spend a shitload of money and it doesn't go the way you want it to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And to a point, you gotta be emotionless on that stuff. Like you just got, like at the end of the day, like I always keep this mindset, like, and this will sound morbid. Like my mom hates when I say this, but like at the end of the day, like we all die. So like, who cares? Just do whatever, what you're having fun with, shoot your shot, go for it. But then like, number two, like money is made up. It's like a human element, and like it doesn't really exist, right? It's just paper. Here's your service. So I just kind of take it like not like monopoly, but at the same time, you're like, I want something really good. This is the price. You know, this is what you get. Pay for what you get. And then it's like, this is going to help me get even more of this made up green piece of paper, you know.
It isn't that funny. I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, really just trading a service. It's just a trade. You're just trading money for this. And I recently read the book, How to Be a Badass with Money. It made me really think about the whole situation of like when I'm talking to prospects or when I'm trying to sell my value, like value is a perceived thing on minds of the clients and or the people, your fan base and yourself. And so is money. Yes, they have a target set like, oh, this is how much a bottled water is, or this is how much this is. And there's a market value of certain things that you provide. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to risk, and people are willing to spend more money with less risk.
Yes. And you also, you have to be willing. I've learned this quickly, but like two things that I think are important. Like number one, you have to be able to just walk away from stuff. Like you got to set whatever you value your time or price at, you got to just, that's what you value. I would do it for no less than this. Like I always have that in mind. Price anchor, whatever strategies you want to use to get the most, but like you got to be able to walk away because negotiations at the end of the day is like, who cares less? Like that's one thing I've learned. Like I've had cool companies like that. I was very, I don't want to say starstruck, but I came out of college, started doing some cool stuff. And it's like, holy cow, like I've looked up to this guy or this girl or this company for a long time. And now they want to like hire me, or aqua hire was a lot of the times, and like not getting caught up and being like, wait a second, what's the long-term vision? Okay, I got to walk away from this. Like, no. And like a lot of people, they have a trouble like, or setting their prices, or they say, hey, I want 2,000 for this service, but they're not really happy and it doesn't last. It's like, no, you got to ask what you want. And if they don't give it to you, walk away.
Yeah.
Whatever, you'll get the next one. So you do have to be kind of emotionless from that standpoint of like business is business. And like, if you're going to try to like,
go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just going to say, like, if you're going to like make it personal, you're like, it's just not going to work and it's going to mess with your mind. Like I don't know. You just get this, like, also like, who cares type mindset. Or like, I don't know. Sometimes I go into meetings now. It's like, wow, this person's really big. Like I shouldn't even be in the room with this person. And like, we're discussing something pretty important or big. And I just go in and just act like I've done this for 20 years, even though they've done it for 40 or whatever. And you're like, whatever, like I'm supposed to be here. And you just have to have that, like, who cares how it goes? Like I'm going to screw up. Like there's calls I'm like, man, I would love to have that one back. Like I really said some dumb stuff, but then it's just like, I'm just like, who cares? Like you learn, you figure it out, you know what you're building, you have a long-term vision, you get the right people around you. Like me and you meet each other because of what we're both building. Now we both can help each other. It just all like comes along. And then you have to balance your time too. Like I say, I built all this, but I also like, I recently just finished a triathlon. So that took up 2 to 3 hours every day. Nice. So it's like you're building multiple things and it's just like still back to like square one. At the end of the day, we all die, it all goes away, all this money's made up. So I want to at least, you can fail at something you don't love. Like my grandpa always told me this, you can fail at something you don't love. You can go take a job you don't like and you could still fail at it. You could still get fired. So you might as well go build something you love and like go all in. And so that's my thing. Like I'm willing to go to zero. Like if I was making $0 or I was negative, but I could still build this, I'd love to. So I think it's hard for a lot of people to find that, but like I encourage people to do.
Yeah. And that's a gift because I've noticed as I've grown my business that, and I'm pretty honest with most people that what I call the business depression, it's like, you'll have days where you're on high end and then you'll just have days where you're just like it's not working today. Like I've had clients that come to me and they've signed agreements and I've worked for them because I built trust and until they're getting the payment ready and I trust people. And then, 3-4 weeks in, their payment doesn't go through and then they ghost me. And then it's like, well, we signed a contract. They don't even like take granted for it. So like, even like that situation in particular, I had a year ago, I had a situation like that and I was distraught like for a whole month. I was, like your girlfriend just broke up with you. We built this relationship. I trusted them. They broke my trust. And that just, those things do happen, and it's okay. That's the thing I think a lot of people have to realize, is that it's okay when those things happen. You just have to get back up on your high horse. And now I just tell myself, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do any, that was my learning experience to realize, hey, I can't keep doing this. I'm have to charge before I do any work from now on. I'm just not going to do work anymore for free.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't necessarily free, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's like I had that happen a lot early on too, where because at the end of the day, like I view it as the same lens. It's how you find out who are the smart business people and like people that built stuff, sold it, and like they're coming to you so that you obviously have something they want, but you also realize like they're smart, they're trying to like get the best deal, and you just like you try to learn from those people, but do it in real time so you don't make such a big mistake. You throw yourself like in a hole. But it's the same type thing. You see something someone else can offer, you're going to try to get it for the lowest possible price, lowest possible value. And like I've had that where companies have come in and they want me to like put out content or help them with things. Oh, here's advisory shares or whatever. And you're just like, eventually you're just like, okay, these are worthless. Like hopefully, yeah, your company gets big and they're worth a ton of money one day. But also at the same time, it's like, no, like my time is worth cash. It's worth changing time and services, not for some futuristic made up thing. But like that's also where you learn like the smart business people, where like in 10 years, I might, see some young kid doing something cool and I want to get him involved. And I'm not taking advantage of him or her, but you're just like, you're trying to get the best of it. So I've actually like viewed those as compliments, because then I actually see who the smart business people are. Because I'm like, they're not just giving me everything. They're obviously trying to get, they see the value I offer, but they're trying to like make it the best for them. So I've like re-engineered that.
Well, and
So
as
I'm
you get to
actually,
know business owners, I mean, it's funny because I'll talk to a few people through some Facebook groups and stuff that are trying to get into the web development and or the branding space, and they're like, want to open an agency, they're just starting out, and they'll ask me questions like, how do I get clients, and or how do I grow this, and I'm like, it depends, bro. And I sat down with someone yesterday, and I recently just redid this for like the 80th time with my business developer the other day, where it was like, hey, like now that I've seen these pain points in these types of business owners in our audience, like let's let's write it out. And so next time I get on a call with somebody in that position, I can kind of look at it and say, but where I was going with that is you, like you just said, you kind of noticed it unawarely, and it's good that you've noticed it. But business owners, marketing directors, whatever your audience is, their mindset is different depending on how much money the business is bringing in. And so anytime I get a client that comes to us or a prospect, and the first thing I hear is, oh, our last agency didn't do too good, or the last person I said didn't do too good, or you have, oh, I have to talk to my significant other, or I have to, can you do it for 1/3 that cost, or something like that. Like, I'm like, it's back to what you said, and we can get into this a little bit deeper. I'd like to get into this a little bit more, but
yeah, go ahead.
I'm like, you're going to be one of that 10% that fails. I'm sorry. Because the limiting beliefs, and so I wanted to circle back around to that, because you talked a little bit about, the limiting beliefs, persevering, that 10%. And I have a theory on this, but I want to hear what your thoughts are on like the whole concept of why, why 10%, like not 10%, why only 10% of businesses make it.
Yeah. And it's actually, yeah, this is good, like transition here for sure. But like back to the point where I said you get what you're paid for. It's funny because I even noticed in myself, hey, I'm not even willing to pay this person that's supposed to be really good, or this company. But then I'm going and doing the same thing where I'm like, oh, they're not going to pay me enough. So it's like you got to have the belief of like you are that big company before you are them. Where, oh, this is, a $10,000 domain. That's nothing in the long-term scheme. So that, what I'm saying? Like, yeah, of course, I'll pay that every day. Because then when you go to a client and they're like you just said, and they're like, 1/3, I want to cut it. And you're like, no, I would never do that. I only work with the top. So it's like when you flip it and you're hiring someone to do something, shouldn't you be the same person you are like when you're trying to hire clients? Like, shouldn't you be like, okay, they are the best. I see it. This is what they'll do the best work for. This is their price. This is where they say they optimize. So if you go under that and they might say yes because they like it, then they're not going to give you their best work because now they're viewing their time as not as efficient. So like I've had that mind, like that's been a few months where I'm like, ooh, like, wow, yeah, I would never work for this company for that. But then I'm trying to like be a skimmer over here. And now I'm just like, nope. And then all of a sudden both started working perfectly. It's funny, like the universe, the mind, God, how it all works. It just like comes together once like your mindset is like both ends. It's funny. And then in terms of the answer your second question, in terms of why 10% only make it, I think is fully from that belief. I think it's fully most people like they quit or they have that they subtly or subliminally feel like they're gonna fail or they're not gonna make it or they just give in. And it's also easy. Like when you get to the point we're in, like what corporate job could we not do now? Like if we got stressed enough, we could just be like, I'm done. I'm packing it in. I can go get a pretty easy job. It's not going to be hard. I can work up pretty fast. And you just the weeks suck, but the weekend you're like, okay, cool. I'll just go chill and do whatever. But it's not fulfilling. So it's like
Yeah.
I think eventually people just they get to that point though where it's just like too hard. And usually when it gets too hard and something gets thrown at you, right on the other side is like all the good stuff. And like that basketball showed me that. Like I said, I'm young, I'm just into this, but like I had 5 Division I offers going into my senior year of basketball in high school. And I committed to a school and things went wrong and I decommitted and I lost all of them. And then things just got really bad. Like I just went through a streak. I wasn't playing well. I know schools wanted to talk to me. And then all of a sudden, I just started playing real loosely and knowing I'm good. I'm going to play at that level. And then they all started to come back and I got the one I wanted and it worked out. So it's like to me now, I'm always like, things will get hard. And it's like basically the universe saying like, how bad do you want this? Are you going to level up? Are you going to
Yeah.
keep fighting for it? And it just weeds out all the other people that quit or all the other businesses or brands. So I think that's like only 10% of people have that mindset. So I think that's why it separates.
And there's nothing wrong with, and just so the audience understands, there's nothing wrong with learning that mindset, because I do think that with the ever growing popularity of social media, and like you said, you have, or we can talk about this in a little while, your Twitter following, you had 55,000 followers, and that probably took time and energy. And I think that with social media now, everyone sees it. And I see it a lot right now with our channel, where like I'll have people we know that I know that will reach out to me and they'll be like, oh, you're only getting like, an average of 40 views on a video. And I'm like, dude, I only have 2,500 followers right now. I'm like, this is pretty average for a 2,500 follower channel for in the education space. And I tell them like, you're only used to seeing people start and then figuring out who they are in their journey. And I heard a good, I was watching, I like to watch a lot of inspirational stuff. It really helps calm me down. And I was watching, there's this comedian, there's this girl on YouTube that I noticed about a year ago. I forgot her name, Julie something. And she wrote a lot about, what was the term she used? She said something about overnight success. She's like, it took me 6 years to become an overnight success. And so a lot of people do, they only see the beginning and the end. And so it's like, yeah, you won't be saying this once I have 100,000 followers or 1 million followers. I'm just not there yet. I need a couple more years. I'm just hitting that compounding effort right now for myself. And I'm like, this is the grind period. And I hear a lot of YouTubers say it too. They're like, once you get monetized, that's when the hard part begins.
Yeah.
So yeah, like back to what you said, I feel like there's just so much. I mean, I mention anything about mindset or shifting mindset. I mean, I like a lot of our courses, we're very focused on mindset before we're going to focus on and time management. We're going to teach people that before we really dive into the best social media strategies or how to build a brand, because you need that stuff to do that stuff. And I don't feel like everyone just a lot of that what we'll say that 90%, they're really like trying to make that quick buck.
Yeah, and it's funny that how you mentioned it. I saw a stat the other day, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's gonna be like close enough to where it registers. It's something like 90% of podcasts don't make it past like 3 episodes or something. Like it's a staggering amount of people. Like everyone can start, right? But then there's just that long period, and it just slowly weeds out, and then boom, the top, just like anything. Well, frankly, it's really cool. Social platforms have built that kind of like structure where the people that bring them all the money compete to get to the top. Oftentimes, I don't make any money directly from Twitter, even though I brought them, millions of impressions and dollars through advertisements. But anyway, like I've even seen myself. I've seen teammates. I've seen, friends, whether from college or high school, start podcasts. And it's funny, that statistic is like about right on track, where I've seen them all do like maybe 5 episodes or a couple weeks, and it falls out. Of course it does, because the first episode you're high on it. Second one you just do, you're starting to people go and listen because the first or second one. But by the 5th one, no one's listening because like they just don't care anymore, and you don't have the audience that cares. So then they all quit. And I've literally seen it like in action. And so I've always been like, to myself, I do a weekly like roundup podcast every week. It's 20 minutes long. It honestly does decent because like I have some audience now, but like I've always just been like, I'm going to put it out. And frankly, I don't care if anyone listens because I do it for myself. So I think when you set like external, if your thing is like how many listens or views or followers or likes aren't cash, man. Like likes are just,
they're vanity, right?
Like, yeah, they're just vanity. So it's like, think of something else. And for me, I learned the space better. This forces me to bullet point it and say it out loud and think about it because I put some commentary. So actually, like I've seen like in sports, the trend of NFTs and Web3, and I've seen like pickleball get big way before anyone else did because I've been forcing myself. So I see these trends. I wrote about Brett Favre, all this stuff coming out on him. I saw that all play out like 5 months ago, and all of a sudden it just got big now. So I'm like, okay, this is keeping me ahead. If people listen, great. They're going to learn and they're going to be right on track with me. If not, who cares? Whatever, I'm learning. So you got to have external stuff for that.
Yeah, you kind of have to have that passion. And I think as you grow, you kind of, it's keeping that in. I mean, my wife right now, she's getting a job, and I can't say which company it's at, but and they're going through like, she's literally gone through like some ridiculous stuff that I've never heard of to get hired. And she's talked to like 80 different people in the process. And I'm like, the hardest part as you get bigger is you keeping the brand consistent. I mean, you and I, for instance, like what you do in the process you do, or like me and all the business stuff because I feel the same way as you. My biggest thing is, hey, if I go in there and I learn this about business and it fails, great, because I've spent money on it, but I learned a mistake, or I learned something that I can go out and teach others what not to do, and, but when it comes to my team, that's our biggest struggling point right now is, we have to keep the voice. We have to relate it to our industry better, stuff like that. Like we really have to focus on that stuff. And that's a big challenge for me. But I think that everyone has a challenge. Like you said, you're always going to have challenges. Business is an ever growing thing. And I think what you're doing, I think it's that's what keeps you valuable, is that you're able to go out there and come up with all this news a little bit earlier on.
Yeah. And then also like the business of athletes, right? You think about how the hell was I going to monetize that? Right? Like there's no end of monetization. You could say sponsors or ads. And it's like, I did that, but then I realized, well, wait a second, you start to see other things come up as you go and opportunities, but it's like, you got to get to that point. And like, because I've gone to here now, I started to, you got to step back and I'm a huge fan of the whiteboard. Like I see you got the whiteboard in there. The whiteboard is like, it's the go-to, man. It's just the stress reliever. It's the like, I know I got all this stuff, but like, what do I actually got? You write it all out. And then all of a sudden, you go and attack and you figure it out. And every few weeks you come back. So So yeah, no, it's fun though. For me, it's fun. And like I should say too, for some people, man, like it's not my thing, but for a lot of people, like some of my friends, like they like I've had friends like, yo, can I come work for you or can I do something? And I'm like, to be honest, no. You're better in the corporate world. Like that's your thing. You like it, you like to go out on Friday, Saturday and have fun, and I'll join you every now and then. But like I like doing this. I like waking up in the morning and not having to get on a call at 9 a.m. and training from like 8 to 10 or whatever, and then figuring out what I want to do. And then I also don't mind getting on at 9 at night and writing an article. That's when I write best. So
Yeah.
like this is mine. I want to schedule it how I want. But for some people, it's fine. Like, so you shouldn't ever judge. I think social media has caused that problem a lot. And I think it's going to be hard for people to just take regular jobs now, because even they see people like you and me, like me and you, we're very passionate, right? You can feel it. Like when people talk to me, like they want to be involved because like they know I really love this. I'm gonna go. Same
Mhm.
with you. But like it's not always that way. It's not always what it seems. And also it's how we're built. Some people aren't built that way. It's not for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not, my wife has to tell me that all the time is she's like, remember, not everyone wants to be a business owner. And
Right.
she's even not like, I have the support of my wife, but I of course have to, she doesn't get it. It's one of those
No.
situations that you're not getting into. And I remember the first day out that I left the corporate world. I had like my last job, and I brought this up before, was kind of like I had the situation I had in my corporate job, and I was planning on leaving for a year. I had you know, I had a job offer for a freelance thing from American Express. I was going to go out to fly to New York. They're going to fly me out for like 3 months and get me a hotel room. I was going to redevelop the whole user interface of their website. And I was like, oh, this is great. Fear kicked in. And I was like, oh, well, even though this is, 6 months, I'm going to get paid a whole year's worth of salary in like 4 or 5 months. I'm like, what am I going to do after that? And so fear kicked in. I turned it down. And then, I think a week later, I tried to get it. I'm like, I'm going to do it. And they're like, oh, we already gave it to somebody else. But that kicked, that situation, very similar to what you said earlier, very similar to the basketball situation that you had, was my leg up to say, all right, this is my leg start to know I have to go out on my own. I had 3 bosses over a 2-year period at the last position I was at. And it was like the Goldilocks syndrome. I had a really good boss, and I had a medium boss, and I had a bad boss. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And I had a pretty good job. And that was the hardest part for me. Like I worked 2 miles from my house. All my coworkers were in different states. My boss was in it 3 hours ahead. So they all left at like 1 to 2 p.m. my time. And I was, even in the corporate world, I saw this, like I was getting like 10 times more shit done, and I wasn't even trying, and I was like, how are all my coworkers like so far behind me? Like
There's
I'm not even trying,
a
you
lot
know?
of incompatible people in this world too. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people I think a lot of people have it in them, but they're just lazy too. Like I think a lot of people are really smart, and you, like anything, you put your mind to it, you can do it. But I think a lot of people are just like, they just take the coast through life. And I'm just like, I'm not going to do that. So like,
Yeah.
I just have fun not doing that. Of course, sometimes it sounds nice. Oh, coast, I get done. I can BS. I have one worksheet to do today, and then I can just mess around the rest of the day. But it's like, I don't know. Like to me, it's just like I get bored with that stuff. Even like I've tried to, take a day off and not do anything. It's just like this isn't like work for me. This is just like fun for me. Like basketball was fun my whole life. Like I liked it. This is just fun for me. So it's like me watching TV is me doing something on this. So it's like, cool, man, whatever you like. But also something I would say is important is everyone, you need to like, so that's why competition can be good, is because like I see some of this stuff now, especially in my space coming up. I think me and you talked about this a little off the air, just about like how you handle competition. But like I love it because now it's like forced me to move faster on stuff I've been working on, but probably working on too slow. And now it's like get it done, release it. Because now I already have the base, which they're trying to copy, but now I have the base plus the next thing. So they're not going to be able to get to that level because I
Yeah.
know it's really hard. It takes too long. And then number 2, like my big thing is never miss a appointment with yourself. Me and you had this podcast that it was 1 p.m. Eastern time for me. I'm gonna be on there at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'm gonna make it because I don't want to let you down and I don't want to miss it. And I'm gonna do it and bring my best effort.
Yeah.
But are you gonna at 9 a.m. Eastern time for me. Like, am I going to wake up and write for an hour? Like I said, I did, I'm going to on my schedule. Like, am I going to miss that meeting with myself? I think a lot of people miss those meetings or they never even set them. You got to set them, get it, do it. And then you're done, right? Like I write for the hour. That's what I did. Now I'm done. I don't have to worry about it. But if you just try to like figure out when you're going to do stuff, whether it's creating content, reaching out to people, you're going to miss stuff. You're not going to do it, or it's just not going to be the best. So just schedule it. Humans are very habitual, and you get it done, and then it becomes easy. So then I know from 7 to 9 or whatever, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of, and like you said, it's okay for people to be content. If they're in the corporate world, like you said, and that's what they want to do, great. I have the burden, just like you, of I always want to be better and I always want to do better. I want to create the best products for my clients that I possibly can. And I want to be the best at what I do in the industry. And the success to that at this point for me, it's not about the money. It's about having money is needed to pay people, like you said earlier. But so you have to pay yourself what you're worth. But I don't have the luxury of just saying, hey, I'm going to take off today because I want to go to the pool, or I'm going to go party. But I also I don't want to. But I do have the time of like last Wednesday. I was just having one of those days where I was like, I just didn't have creative juices flowing. I didn't have it all. And I'm like, I'm dabbling for an hour and I'm like, I'm just not doing it today. I just need to take a rest day, and I'm allowed to. You're allowed to have a burnout day.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell people a little bit about, I mean, we could rant all day, but why don't you give people a little bit of information on where you're going, like what you're trying to do right now with Profluence and what your plans are for it.
For sure. Yeah. High level, I'll give the high level. Continuing to grow the Twitter and the newsletter. The Twitter is like more entertainment type stuff. A lot around like athlete investments, our cool sports business stories. And then I'm taking that now to like video platforms. So like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube shorts. I already have basically the scripts. They're the Twitter threads, just video editing now. And then, but what I really love is like the newsletter, like real in-depth pieces, whether on those athletes or more so like on the space, the trends, here's why blockchain's a $1 trillion market, or like stuff like that, and how it impacts sports. Like today I wrote about India and why it's going to be the sports hub in the next 10 years. Like I love that stuff because it's like learning and it's like, it's entertaining still. And then turning those into more long form type videos. So like having like 10-minute videos that are like more in depth as well. So that's kind of like where I'm going, is the Twitter and newsletter to the videos. And then past that, like I said, I think at the beginning is I'm just kind of like seeing how it plays out. Like those have led to the sponsorship opportunities and the ability to hire cool people. Something else that I think you would admit is very cool when you can help someone and you're like paying them and they're feel a part of it. Like it's a very cool feeling that, not a lot of people ever have to pay someone.
Yeah.
And it's like, might suck at first, but then it's like, it becomes really cool of like, wow, man, like this person also relies on me, which can get scary. But anyway, the kind of, I have a 4-stage plan. I'm hitting stage 2 now. And then the 3rd stage website, which with a bunch of cool other features that I can tell you privately. I won't say publicly just because, like I said, I need to be a leg ahead of some people. And then the 4th stage, which is kind of more public, is to get more into like using cash flow through sort of helping startups or bigger sports companies, just kind of in my skill sets or advisory consulting, or, we'll see how it kind of plays out, but leading more into what I'm really interested in, which is like the investing and the true value adds you can add to companies, which a lot of the time becomes the capital, the network, and the skill sets, or the people that have those skill sets. So I've dabbled a little in angel investing over the last 6 months, just to get some skin in the game, but ultimately would love to have a big fund and collaborate with cool people and be major owners of companies. So now it's like Profluence is my brand, but I also own 20% of this company that's all getting really big. Like, I think that would be really cool. So we'll see. Just taking it step by step and, having fun, meeting people and building along the way.
So if they want to subscribe to your Twitter and to your newsletter, where do they find it?
Yeah, at Andrew Petcash on all the socials. So that's Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. And then it's going to be profluence.com. The domain is a couple days away from just transferring.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just Andrew Petcash. You can hit me up anywhere. I'm always pretty responsive.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the Brand Power Analysis. And I look forward to us having future conversations. Maybe we'll have you again on the podcast soon. I enjoy these conversations with you.
For sure. Appreciate it, Zach.
All right. Thanks.